The text message arrived at 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, right in the middle of my quarterly budget review meeting. My phone, face up on the conference table, lit up with my husband's name. Card declined at Costco. Fix it. Not a question, not a request, a command. I stared at the message while my CFO continued presenting third quarter projections, his voice a distant hum as the words on my screen rearranged everything I thought I understood about my marriage. 11 years. We'd been married for 11 years, and somewhere along the way, without my noticing the exact moment of transformation, I'd become not a wife, but a service provider. An ATM with emotions, a checkbook that occasionally required acknowledgement of its existence. Diane? My CFO's voice pulled me back. Your thoughts on the capital expenditure request? I set my phone face down, cleared my throat, and returned to the meeting. The software company I'd built from nothing required my attention. The 37 employees depending on their paychecks required my focus. My husband's credit card drama could wait, but the message sat there in my mind like a stone in my shoe, impossible to ignore. Card declined. Fix it. As if I'd broken something that needed repair rather than simply stopped funding his spending. Because here's what Ryan didn't know. What I'd decided 3 days earlier but hadn't yet told him. I wasn't fixing it. Not this time. Not ever again. At 42, I'd finally done the math, and the numbers told a story I'd been avoiding for far too long. The fight that changed everything had happened 4 nights earlier on a Friday evening when I'd come home from work to find Ryan on the couch, beer in hand, watching some podcast where men discussed the decline of civilization due to women in the workplace. You're late, he said without looking up. Dinner? I texted you at 3. Board meeting ran long. I set my bag down, exhaustion from a 14-hour day settling into my bones. There's leftover lasagna in the fridge. I don't want leftovers. I thought maybe you'd actually cook tonight since it's Friday. Something in his tone made me pause. Ryan, I've been at work since 7 this morning. We have perfectly good food in the house. Yeah, food you bought. Food you always buy. He finally looked at me, and I saw something in his expression I'd been seeing more frequently lately. Resentment. You ever notice how you use money to avoid actual wife responsibilities? I felt my jaw tighten. Excuse me. I'm just saying traditional wives cook. They take care of their husbands. They don't throw money at problems and call it marriage. Traditional wives. I repeated the words carefully, trying to understand what I was hearing. You want a traditional wife. I want a wife who acts like a wife, who cares about our home, who doesn't make me feel like a kept man just because your software company got lucky. Got lucky. My software company that I'd built from a spare bedroom startup to a multi-million-dollar enterprise through 7 years of 18-hour days. Got lucky. Ryan, you quit your job 4 years ago because we agreed you'd start your consulting business. I supported that decision. I've been supporting it. See, there you go again. Supporting. He stood, and I realized he was actually angry. Genuinely, visibly angry. That's not what I asked for. I didn't ask to be supported like I'm your charity project. I asked you to be a partner, an actual wife. What do you think I've been doing? Writing checks, paying bills, making sure your husband has an allowance. His voice dripped with contempt I'd never heard before. You know what traditional marriage looks like. The man provides. The woman takes care of the home. Maybe if you spent less time at the office trying to prove something, we'd actually have a marriage worth staying in. The words hung in the air between us like smoke from a fire I hadn't noticed starting. You want traditional marriage? I asked quietly. You want me to be a traditional wife? I want you to be my wife. Not my boss. Not my benefactor. My wife. I walked past him to our home office, logged into our bank accounts, and started pulling up statements. Credit card bills, automated payments, account transfers, the digital record of our financial life together. And that's when I did the math I'd been avoiding for 4 years. Ryan's consulting business had generated exactly $8,400 in revenue, total, across 4 years. That was $2,100 per year, $175 per month, roughly the cost of his gym membership and craft beer habit. Meanwhile, I'd been paying the mortgage on our 4-bedroom house, $3,800 a month, both car payments, $950 month. All utilities, $450 month. Groceries, $800 month. His credit cards, $2,200 month average. Health insurance, $1,600 month. His business expenses for the consulting firm that generated no income, $500 month. Entertainment, dining out, his hobbies, at $500 month. I'd been covering approximately $11,800 in monthly expenses. Ryan's contribution, the $175 he occasionally earned from his non-existent consulting business, which he typically spent on business lunches. That looked suspiciously like regular lunches with his unemployed friends. For 4 years, I'd been the sole provider while somehow feeling guilty that I worked too much, while being told I wasn't wife enough because I paid for everything instead of cooking enough dinners. I sat in that office for 2 hours, spreadsheets open, looking at the financial reality of my marriage. Then I made a decision. If Ryan wanted a traditional marriage, he could have one. Just maybe not the version he was imagining. On Monday morning, before that budget review meeting, I'd made several phone calls. To our bank, removing Ryan's access to the primary checking account and establishing a separate household account with a specific monthly transfer. To the credit card companies, removing Ryan as an authorized user on my business and personal cards. To my attorney, consultation on how to protect business assets and establish financial separation without immediate divorce filing. By Tuesday afternoon, when Ryan's card was declined at Costco, the changes were already in effect. He just hadn't discovered it yet. I didn't respond to his text. I finished my meeting, approved the capital expenditures, and drove home with my phone buzzing intermittently as more messages arrived. Card not working at gas station either. What did you do? This is embarrassing, Diane, call me. When I walked through the door at 6:30 p.m., Ryan was waiting in the kitchen, laptop open, face flushed with anger that barely concealed his panic. What the hell did you do to the accounts? I set my bag down calmly, took off my jacket. I gave you what you asked for, a traditional marriage. What are you talking about? You said you wanted a traditional wife, someone who takes care of the home instead of working so much, someone who doesn't make you feel like a kept man. I pulled a folder from my bag and set it on the kitchen counter. So I'm restructuring our finances to support that traditional model you want. He opened the folder, scanning the documents inside. Bank statements showing the new account structure, credit card cancellation notices, a detailed budget breakdown. This says I have access to $3,000 a month. His voice had gone quiet, dangerous. That's it? That's the household account for groceries, utilities, gas, household expenses. I'll continue paying the mortgage, car payments, and insurance directly from my accounts. I watched his face as he processed the information. Isn't that how traditional marriages work? The provider manages the major bills, gives the homemaker a household budget? You're giving me an allowance. The disbelief in his voice would have been funny if it weren't so sad. I'm giving you exactly what you asked for. You wanted me to be a traditional wife, so I'm giving you the opportunity to be a traditional husband. The man provides, remember? That's what you said, so I'm stepping back from providing. Your consulting business can support us. That's insane. My business is still building. It's been 4 years, Ryan. You've earned $8,400 total. That's $40 per week. I pulled out another document. Meanwhile, I've paid $566,400 in household expenses over those same 4 years, not counting the mortgage on this house, which I paid off using the proceeds from my company's acquisition offer that you told me to refuse, because traditional wives don't prioritize work over family. He stared at the numbers, and I watched something flicker across his face. Not shame, not recognition, but calculation. He was already figuring out how to spin this, how to make me the unreasonable one. So this is punishment. I hurt your feelings by suggesting you could be more present in our marriage, and you retaliate by cutting off my access to money? This is partnership. You want to redefine what marriage means, so we're redefining it. You handle the home, cook dinners, manage the household budget, take care of the domestic responsibilities you feel I've been neglecting. I'll focus on work and providing the income. Traditional roles, exactly what you asked for. That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? I leaned against the counter, genuinely curious. What does traditional marriage look like to you, Ryan? Because from where I'm standing, it looked like me paying for everything while you criticized how I wasn't wife enough while doing it. I just wanted you to care about our relationship, to prioritize us over your company. I built that company while married to you. I included you in every major decision. I supported your choice to quit your job and start consulting. I've paid for our entire life for 4 years, while you figured out your career path. How is that not prioritizing us? It's different when the woman earns more. It changes the dynamic. It changes your ego. The words came out sharper than I'd intended, but I didn't take them back. You're not upset that I work too much. You're upset that I'm successful and you're not. And instead of addressing that honestly, you've spent months telling me I'm not a good enough wife while I literally pay for your existence. The silence that followed felt heavy, loaded with all the things we'd been avoiding saying for years. The $3,000 a month is generous, I continued, my voice steadier now. It's more than enough for household expenses if you're careful. Meal planning, smart shopping, actually managing a budget. All those traditional skills you think I'm neglecting. And my credit cards? Canceled. Well, removed from my accounts. If you want credit cards, you'll need to apply for them based on your own income and credit. I pulled out one more document. Which brings me to the other change. I've stopped paying your half of our joint credit card debt, the $47,000 balance that we've been carrying. His face went pale. That debt is from both of us. Actually, when I pulled the itemized statements, $41,000 of it is charges you made, business expenses for your consulting firm, equipment for your home office. That conference in Austin you insisted was crucial for networking, the new laptop, the standing desk, the noise-canceling headphones, the subscription services. I met his eyes. I've been paying the minimums for 2 years. Now you're responsible for your portion. I can't afford. This is financial abuse. You're trying to control me through money. I'm letting you experience what I've been experiencing. The weight of being sole financial provider while being told it's not enough. The stress of managing all the money while being criticized for working too much. The exhaustion of carrying everything while being informed you're not a good enough partner because you're focused on the wrong things. Ryan sat down heavily at the kitchen table, the documents scattered in front of him. So what? This is how it is now. You hold all the power and I just have to accept it. No. This is where we see if you actually want a partnership or if you want a situation where you benefit from my income without acknowledging the work it requires. I picked up my bag. I'm going to work late tonight. There's chicken in the fridge if you want to cook dinner, or you can order from that $3,000 household budget. Your choice. I left him sitting there and went back to the office, my hands shaking on the steering wheel as I drove. Not from anger, from relief. After 4 years of feeling guilty for my success, for my salary, for not being enough despite providing everything, I'd finally named the pattern I'd been trapped in. I didn't know if Ryan would rise to the challenge or collapse under it, but either way, I'd know the truth about who I'd married. What I couldn't predict was how completely a man's sense of self could unravel when his carefully constructed illusions about traditional gender roles ran headfirst into the reality of actual financial dependence. The breaking would come faster than I expected, and far more dramatically than I could have imagined. The first week was almost entertaining. Ryan approached the household budget like a project, creating elaborate spreadsheets, tracking grocery expenses, and meal planning. He cooked dinner 3 nights, each meal accompanied by commentary about how exhausting domestic work was and how much I should appreciate his efforts. I did appreciate them. I told him so. But something in my praise seemed to irritate him rather than please him, as if he'd wanted me to be more impressed, more grateful, more aware of the sacrifice he was making by doing basic household tasks. By week 2, the spreadsheets had been abandoned. Dinner became frozen pizza or takeout ordered from his increasingly stressed household budget. The house cleaning he'd promised to handle hadn't materialized. The laundry was piling up in the bedroom. I can't do everything, he snapped, when I asked about the dishes in the sink. I've been working on client proposals all day. For your consulting business? Yes, for my business. Just because you don't respect my work doesn't mean it's not real. I didn't point out that proposals for clients he didn't have weren't exactly productive work. Instead, I did the dishes myself after my 12-hour day, noting the irony of his complaint about doing everything while literally nothing except dinner ordering had been accomplished. Week 3 brought the first real crisis. Ryan's car payment bounced because he'd miscalculated the household budget and spent too much on groceries and takeout. The $3,000 hadn't covered everything he was accustomed to buying, and he hadn't adjusted his habits to match the new reality. "You need to increase the household account," he demanded. "$3,000 isn't enough. It's $36,000 a year for groceries, utilities, gas, and household items. For 2 people, that's more than generous. It's not enough when you refuse to eat anything but organic and you want the house at 68 degrees. I'm not the one who insists on organic everything. That was your choice. And I've been suggesting we raise the thermostat for years to save money, but you always said we could afford it. We could afford it when you weren't playing financial games. We can afford it now. The difference is you're the one managing the budget and seeing where the money actually goes." He didn't like that response. He liked it even less when I refused to cover his car payment and instead suggested he call his parents for help or figure out a solution himself. The solution he chose was to finally start applying to actual jobs. By week 4, Ryan had sent out 17 resumes and received 3 rejection emails and 14 non-responses. The consulting business that had been so crucial to his identity had been quietly shelved in favor of searching for positions he considered beneath his skill level, but that would at least provide income. "This is humiliating," he said one evening, laptop open to job listings. "I'm 44 years old. I shouldn't be applying for middle management positions like some kid out of college. You're 44 years old with a 4-year gap in employment and no recent professional references. What kind of position were you expecting?" I expected my wife to support my career transition instead of sabotaging it. I supported it for 4 years. I paid for everything while you built your consulting business, the business that generated an average of $175 a month. I kept my voice level. I'm still supporting it. You live in a house I own, drive a car I'm paying off, eat food bought with money I earn. What exactly am I not supporting? My dignity, my role as a husband, He stopped, searching for words. "You've emasculated me." There it was, the word I'd been waiting for him to say. Emasculated. As if his masculinity was so fragile that it required my financial submission to remain intact. "Your dignity isn't my responsibility to maintain, Ryan. If you feel emasculated by not having access to unlimited money you didn't earn, that's something you need to examine in yourself. This isn't what I signed up for when we got married. Neither is this." I gestured to the expensive house, the luxury cars, the lifestyle we'd been living entirely on my income. "You didn't sign up to be supported by your wife while criticizing her for working too hard either. But here we are." That night, I found him in the garage at 2 a.m., surrounded by boxes he'd pulled from storage, old trophies from his college baseball days, photos from his corporate career before he'd quit, evidence of the life he'd had before our marriage, before he'd decided to start consulting, before he'd become financially dependent on someone he now resented. "I used to be somebody," he said, without looking at me. "I had respect. People listened when I talked. People still listen to you. People who are paid to listen, maybe. People who have to be nice because you write their paychecks." He held up an old trophy. "I was MVP of my division. I closed million-dollar deals. I was good at what I did. You could be good at something again, but you'd have to actually do it instead of just planning to do it. You don't understand. It's different for men. We need purpose, identity, a sense of contributing. Yeah, Ryan, women need those things too. The difference is we figured out we could have them while also doing laundry and cooking dinner and managing households. We didn't demand our partners do everything while we figured ourselves out." He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw something I hadn't seen in years. Fear, not of me, but of himself, of what he'd become, of the reality that his grand consulting plan had been an excuse to avoid the actual hard work of rebuilding a career. "I don't know how to fix this," he said quietly. "Start by fixing yourself. Get the job, any job. Contribute financially to the partnership you say you want. Then we can talk about what our marriage actually looks like instead of what you wish it looked like. By month 2, Ryan had accepted a position as a project manager at a marketing firm. The salary was $73,000, less than half what he'd made at his old corporate job, but actual income after 4 years of essentially nothing. He started commuting, wearing business casual, coming home exhausted, and complaining, constantly complaining. About his boss who was younger than him, about colleagues who didn't respect his experience, about the work that was beneath his capabilities, about being tired after 8-hour days, as if exhaustion was a unique condition he'd discovered. "I don't know how you do this every day," he said one evening, collapsed on the couch after work. "It's soul-crushing." I looked up from my laptop where I was reviewing contracts. "I do it every day while also managing the household you were supposed to be taking care of." "That's different." "How?" He didn't have an answer, or rather, he had an answer he'd realized he couldn't say out loud anymore. That it was different because he was a man, and men weren't supposed to work while their wives out-earned them. That his exhaustion mattered more than mine, because his identity was wrapped up in being a provider, while mine was supposed to be wrapped up in being a caretaker. The credit card debt became his obsession. The $41,000 he now had to address without my monthly payments ballooned with interest and late fees. Collection calls started coming. His credit score plummeted. The man who'd spent years treating money as infinite suddenly discovered what financial consequences felt like. "I need help," he admitted one Sunday morning. "I can't make the minimum payments on this debt and contribute to household expenses. The math doesn't work on $73,000 a year." Welcome to what most Americans experience daily. I didn't say it cruelly, just factually. 2/3 of the country lives paycheck to paycheck. They make hard choices about what to pay and what to let slide. They sacrifice and struggle and stress about money constantly. "I know, but what?" You thought you'd never have to experience that because you married someone who'd shield you from financial reality, while simultaneously demanding that person be more domestic and less focused on the work that was shielding you. He was quiet for a long time. Then, "I was an asshole." "Yeah, I'm still being an asshole sometimes." "Yeah, but I'm trying to be less of one." I looked at him, this man I'd married 11 years ago, when we'd both been different people with different dreams. "Are you trying because you understand what you did wrong? Or are you trying because you want access to my money again?" "I don't know." At least he was honest. Maybe both? I hate that I need financial help, but I also hate that I didn't see how much you were carrying until I had to carry just a fraction of it myself. "The debt is your responsibility," I said firmly. "I'll help you create a payment plan, but I'm not bailing you out. You need to feel the full weight of the choices you made." "That's harsh." "That's consequences, real ones. The kind people face when they spend money they don't have and assume someone else will fix it." Over the next several months, I watched Ryan slowly, painfully learn what financial responsibility actually meant. He consolidated the debt at a high interest rate because his credit was destroyed. He took on freelance work on weekends to make extra payments. He stopped eating out, stopped buying unnecessary items, stopped treating money as an abstract concept rather than a finite resource. He also stopped criticizing me for working, stopped making comments about traditional wives and gender roles, stopped acting as if my career success was a personal affront to his masculinity. Not because he'd had some enlightened revelation about feminism or equality, but because he was too exhausted from his own job to have energy left over for resentment. Because he'd discovered that working, commuting, and managing finances was actually hard. Because he'd been forced to do math. The ugly truth was that respect born from exhaustion wasn't the same as respect born from understanding. But it was a start. Month 6 brought an unexpected development. Ryan's company offered him a promotion, not to his old level, but a step up. Director of Client Services. $95,000 plus bonus potential. More responsibility, more hours, better trajectory. He turned it down. Why, I asked when he told me. That's a significant raise. It would help with the debt payoff. Because if I take it, I'll be working 60-hour weeks like my boss. And I just got to where I'm actually cooking dinner sometimes, actually contributing to running the household. He looked at me carefully. I don't want to become what I accused you of being. Someone so focused on career that I forget to be a partner. It was the first moment I thought maybe we'd survive this. What if we rethink all of it, I suggested. Not traditional roles, not reversed roles, but actual partnership. We both work, we both contribute financially, we both handle household responsibilities. No one's the provider, no one's the homemaker. We're just two people managing a life together. Can we afford that? For me to turn down a promotion? We can if we're smart. If we both commit to the budget. If we make financial decisions together instead of you spending and me covering it, or me controlling everything and you resenting it. I don't know how to do that, the partnership thing. I thought I did, but clearly I didn't. Neither do I admitted. I thought paying for everything was partnership. Turns out I was enabling you to avoid growth while building resentment about it. We both got it wrong. That night, we sat down with spreadsheets and started actually planning. Not me planning while Ryan complained, or Ryan pretending to manage a budget while I paid for everything. Actually planning together. The mortgage on the house I owned, both car payments, the debt, his and the small amount that was legitimately joint, monthly expenses, savings goals, individual discretionary spending, shared household costs. This is depressing, Ryan said, looking at the numbers. We're basically starting over financially because I spent 4 years pretending to have a business, instead of admitting I was scared to go back to corporate work. Yeah, and I blamed you for my fear, made it about traditional marriage and gender roles when really I was just terrified of failing. Yeah, I'm sorry, he looked at me, and I saw something I hadn't seen in years. Actual remorse. Not sorry I got caught or sorry you're mad. Sorry for what he'd done. I'm sorry I took your success and made it about my insecurity. I'm sorry I criticized you for providing while I contributed nothing. I'm sorry I demanded you be traditional while I was anything but. I'm sorry I enabled it for so long. I let you drift because it was easier than confronting how unhappy I was becoming. I paid for everything because I could, not because I should. We sat in that honesty for a while, the spreadsheet glowing between us, our financial reality, our actual life, stripped of pretense and performance. I want to try, Ryan said finally, not to go back to how things were, because that was broken, but to build something different, harder maybe, but real. It'll require you staying employed, managing your debt, contributing financially and domestically, being an actual partner. I know. And it'll require me sharing control, letting you make financial decisions even when I disagree, trusting you after 4 years of evidence that maybe I shouldn't. I know that too. We might fail. We might. He reached across the table, his hand covering mine. But I'd rather fail trying to be a real partnership than succeed at whatever we were doing before. 2 years after I stopped paying Ryan's credit card bills, we're still married. Not because the crisis fixed everything, but because it broke enough of the right things that we could rebuild differently. Ryan is still at the marketing firm. He accepted the promotion eventually, after we'd established better patterns. We split household responsibilities based on energy and capacity rather than gender. Some weeks he cooks more, some weeks I do. Some months I carry more financial weight. Some months it's more equal. The credit card debt is down to $18,000. Still there, still his responsibility, but manageable. His credit score is recovering. He's learned to live within his means, and more importantly, he's learned what means actually are. I sold my company last year for an amount that would make both of us financially secure for life. The acquisition offer I'd refused 4 years ago when Ryan said traditional wives don't prioritize work over family. This time, I made the decision myself. We could pay off his remaining debt tomorrow with the proceeds. We could eliminate the financial stress entirely. But we don't. Because Ryan needs to finish what he started. Needs to prove to himself that he can be responsible for his own choices and their consequences. The word traditional never comes up anymore. Neither does emasculated. We're just two people who work and come home tired and figure out dinner and manage money and occasionally resent each other's choices, but do it honestly now. I teach a workshop sometimes at women's business conferences, Financial Boundaries and Partnership. I tell the story of my marriage, the 4 years of paying for everything while being told I wasn't enough, the spreadsheets that forced both of us to see truth. Women always ask, "But don't you regret being so harsh, cutting him off so completely?" The answer is no. I regret the 4 years I spent enabling dysfunction while believing I was being a good wife. I regret accepting criticism for my success instead of requiring respect for it. I regret letting someone redefine partnership as me doing everything while they pursued fantasies of entrepreneurship. But I don't regret the moment I said enough. The moment I did the math and recognized the pattern. The moment I stopped paying for my own diminishment. Because here's what I learned. Traditional marriage isn't traditional anymore. The economy doesn't support single-income households for most families. Gender roles that made sense in 1950 are fantasy in 2025. And any partnership that requires one person to be less than they are, less successful, less ambitious, less visible, isn't partnership at all. Ryan learned something too. He learned that masculinity isn't measured in paychecks or control or having a wife who defers to you. It's measured in showing up, doing the work, being honest about your limitations, and contributing to the partnership in real ways rather than theoretical ones. He learned it the hard way, by having his card declined at Costco, by facing his debt alone, by working a job he didn't love but that was necessary, by discovering that traditional gender roles felt great when he benefited from my income while criticizing my ambition, but felt terrible when he had to actually perform the provider role he claimed to want. The breaking wasn't pretty, but sometimes things need to break before they can be rebuilt properly. We keep the old spreadsheets, the ones showing $400 in expenses I covered while being told I wasn't traditional enough. Not as punishment or reminder of wrongs, but as evidence of a pattern we both chose to end. On hard days, when we're arguing about money or responsibilities, or who's doing more than their share, we look at those numbers and remember. Remember how bad it got when we pretended partnership meant one person carrying everything while the other criticized the effort. Remember that real marriage requires both people showing up completely, financially, domestically, emotionally. My business partners sometimes ask me about work-life balance, how I manage a demanding career and marriage. I tell them the truth. I don't balance, I integrate. I work hard and I love my work, and I refuse to apologize for either thing. And I married someone who had to learn to handle that reality or leave. Ryan would tell it differently. He'd say I forced him to grow up at 44, to face his failures and insecurities and pretensions. He'd say I was harsh and uncompromising, and that the year of financial separation was brutal. He'd also say it saved him, saved us, because it forced honesty that we'd been avoiding. The text message that started it all, card declined at Costco, fix it, is saved in my phone. I look at it sometimes when I'm making difficult business decisions, when I'm negotiating contracts or setting boundaries or refusing to accept less than I deserve. It reminds me that I don't fix other people's problems anymore, that I don't enable dysfunction in the name of partnership, that love doesn't require me to be smaller so someone else can feel bigger. Ryan's card declined at Costco, and I didn't fix it. It broke him in ways that needed breaking, humbled him in ways that needed humbling, forced growth that never would have happened if I'd kept enabling the fantasy that traditional gender roles meant I paid for everything while being criticized for not being domestic enough. He learned to fix his own problems, to manage his own finances, to contribute to a partnership instead of just benefiting from one. And I learned something just as valuable, that my worth isn't measured in how much I provide, how much I earn, or how successfully I subsidize someone else's illusions. That partnership means both people carrying weight, making contributions, showing up completely. The card declined. I didn't fix it. And that decision, that refusal to enable one more day of dysfunction masquerading as traditional marriage, was the best choice I've made in our 11 years together. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is let them face the full consequences of their choices, even when, especially when, they insisted those consequences were your responsibility to prevent. My marriage isn't traditional. It's real, and that's worth more than any ideology about who should earn or cook or defer or provide. We're just two people doing math together now, splitting bills, sharing responsibilities. building something that works because we're both actually building it. It's not the marriage Ryan said he wanted when he demanded I be more traditional, but it's the marriage we both needed when we finally got honest about what partnership actually requires. The spreadsheets don't lie, and neither do we. Not anymore. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to the channel. Share your own experiences with financial boundaries in relationships in the comments below. Remember, partnership requires both people contributing, not one person carrying everything while being criticized for how they do it. Until next time.